Greetings, everyone. I'm excited to welcome Joel Abramson, CEO and co-founder of Produce8 to the show today. Joel, welcome.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here, Ben.
Yeah, great to have you here. And you've got a really diverse background, so excited for the show today. But tell us a little bit about your SaaS background.
Yeah, so I've been involved in SaaS and in particular for managed service providers, MSPs, for a number of years. So I work with Top-Down Ventures, who supports a number of different SaaS companies in the MSP space. So ScalePad is our biggest one right now, about 200 staff serving about 11,000 MSPs. The founder of Top-Down actually founded a company called IT Glue, which again surpassed 10,000 MSPs and was a landmark product in that space, helping MSPs manage documentation for their customers. So we've had a number of success stories over the years, and really lucky to be embraced by the MSP community. And I've been on the other side of the house as well, running an MSP. So that's been, most of my career has been spent as an MSP operator. So we, had a little MSP, then joined forces with an MSP called Fully Managed, and then that grew and merged with a company called CareWorks in 2018, and eventually exited to TELUS, which is kind of Canada's AT&T in 2022. So they're doing great things over there now, and I'm with Chris at Top-Down Ventures, and we also have a couple of interesting projects, the Produce8 being one of them that we'll talk about today.
Yeah, definitely. So how do you split your time right now? Because you're co-founder and CEO of a company, and also then it looks like partner at Top-Down Ventures. So kind of, both roles right now. Is that how you spend your time during the week?
Exactly. Yeah. So support all the top-down companies, at the board level, at the strategy level, where we can dip down in execution. So personally supporting on corporate development efforts and overseeing, finance functions and looking for new companies that can join the top-down portfolio as well. So get to meet with lots of interesting companies every month. And then Produce8 is, as a co-founder and as the CEO, spending a lot of time there. As over the last couple of years, we've had a great leadership team that's been building the product. And so myself and the other two co-founders, Mark Scott, who's the current president of Fully Managed, the MSP we talked about, and Chris Day, my partner at Top-Down, he's the other co-founder of Produce8. So we give Produce8 a lot of direction on its product strategy. And now as we've just opened up our general sign up and get ready for our monetized product here in Q2, it's getting a lot of my attention.
Well, that's great. Well, let's dive into Produce8. So what services and or products does Produce8 offer?
Yeah, I'll give you an overview. So Produce8, was born in a really interesting time. It was ideated pre-pandemic as we started to really investigate how distractions were disrupting the average knowledge worker. And we were looking at things like open office environments and just the general transition of messaging and Slack and Teams in an office environment. And then we had this so we were just getting going with all of that research. And then the pandemic set in and everybody went home. And all of a sudden we had this really interesting expedited challenge of what is everybody doing? And it was a question that all the CEOs were asking. And, when I get into these conversations, there's lots of great employee monitoring products out there. And so I would bring those up and there'd be this visceral reaction to it. I don't need to monitor my people. I trust my people. That's what managers are for. And look, there's a great place for monitoring tools in a lot of compliance-driven areas of organizations. It's a massive cultural shift to start to deploy monitoring tools, especially as we shifted to this remote first or hybrid environment. So we saw this really interesting opportunity of, like connected, but not creepy, trying to really just create something that would be an alternative to employee monitoring while also accomplishing a bunch of the goals that we'll talk about here. So, where it's landed through the last, 2.5 years of development and market research and talking to beta customers and building is, we've come up with this whole idea that we look at time and the time, like kind of the rate at which it passes, it's like that's an indisputable fact. But the problem with time is that we perceive its passage differently. It can appear to slow down or speed up based simply on what we're doing. And we also experience it differently. So what happens during my day can't be replicated by any other person. And so as a result, we all form opinions about our use of time and others that don't really reflect reality. So the problem of the digital workplace are very real and very large. And the evidence is now there that the digital worker productivity is declining while hours worked are rising. So it's a very interesting intersection. And so we're dealing with a massive and growing volume of digital noise that's costing us an average of 90 minutes a day is what our, what the research out there is showing. And so feels like we understand a bunch of the sources of these problems. There's no real consensus about the specific nature of them. And there's no real possibility to consider nuance. So the absence of data leaves executives and ourselves included drawing these inaccurate conclusions and starting to react with blunt decisions, and those can lead to unintended consequences. So if you saw, there's a new story every week that's a relatable story to the problem we're trying to solve. And 2 weeks ago, it was Spotify gets on and says, we're canceling all meetings, all meetings, no more meetings. And like, that's a pretty, blunt way to address the problem. So, and then we look at traditional message of addressing the challenges, and they're based largely on the assumption that the employee is the problem, that they're going to fix it. And that we feel like incorrectly absolves the business and its leaders for not spending the time to understand what technology uses and management practice are doing to impair human potential. Mm-hmm. So, we have this philosophy that we can change it all, but we need to start with the data. Yep. So Produce 8 is an analytics platform that helps digital first teams understand how they allocate their time and leverage technology. And put simply, our goal is to help everyone recover an hour a day. And teams can improve performance, and companies can, sustain profitability. And at the end of the day, we can all protect employee well-being.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So give us a sample use case. So if I'm could this be a 500 employee firm with a lot of remote workers? And so what happens? You put Produce 8 in, and then what happens?
So, I guess it starts with, the platform is built on a foundation of trust and on control of personal information. So, our goal is to help teams get their data and form a shared understanding of the nature, challenges, and what's going on in the digital workplace. So we're not passing judgment and telling them what's good for them. We're starting by showing them the data. So we have two inroads. We have the ability to pick up the product on your own. So you can install it, I can install it, employee A at company of 500 people can install it, and they can just log in, download the desktop agent, install the browser plugin, and then they can just pick the apps that they want to start to understand what's going on with. So if you don't pick Facebook, you're not going to be, monitoring what's going on Facebook. You're not going to be sending information back to your employer about what's happening on Facebook. It's just, let's start with what's happening in Salesforce. So let's start now so if you want to understand what's happening in your digital workday as an individual, you can just start to understand that. So for me, the same way my Aura ring tells me I had 6 drinks last night and I had a really lousy sleep. I knew that before my Aura ring. Now I wake up in the morning and I see that it's a worse sleep than I had for the previous 6 nights. And so, it's going to help me make decisions based on that data every day that comes in. Also, I had a great workout yesterday, today or 2 days ago, and I can see how that correlates throughout my day. So it's informing my daily decisions with data. It's the same thing. I know I feel lousy after doing 10 hours of Zoom meetings a day. I know it, I recognize it, yet I still continue to book it every second day. So our goal is or what Produce 8 does is I log in and I see that, yesterday it's a really hard day. There was 10 hours of Zoom meetings and, all this other work in these digital tools. And, I was hopping around a lot and I didn't go more than 15 minutes without being interrupted on, by a Slack message. And you can start to really understand what's happening in your digital workday. And then, you get a score. So you say, my distraction score was quite high yesterday relative to my average day, or my digital intensity score was really high because I had 10 Zoom meetings. And so it's the same concepts about well-being for your digital life. So we call it digital well-being.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, yeah, it's hard to track that. You're spending a lot of time on Zoom, but then not doing anything about it, or tons of time in meetings. So really interesting use case. So what year did you found Produce 8?
So we founded it just over 2.5 years ago, and we've been building ever since. So I might just jump back to the case for a
Oh,
company,
mhm.
because I gave you the individual use case. So for digital well-being, but for a company, it can start out as simply, let's look at what's happening in Salesforce. So I'm gonna sign up. I'm gonna get everybody on Salesforce onto the platform, and we're just gonna check Salesforce, and we're gonna see that, of our 500 person organization, we've got
Mhm.
200 licenses of Salesforce, but only 106 people are using it on a daily basis.
Mhm.
Okay. No, there's lots of different, audit tools for SaaS out there.
Mhm.
That's interesting. Then you can start, again, it's privacy driven. So people opt into sharing this information. So maybe 30 people aren't sharing that information. Okay, so then let's talk to those 30 people. Why aren't you sharing that information? Facilitate the conversation. Oh, we're just trying to understand the usage. If we cut 10 Salesforce licenses, we could hire that extra, SDR at the front end.
Mhm.
Oh, interesting. So then you start to build a culture around understanding what's going on in the digital work environment. And then it turns out that your top sales performers use Salesforce 6 hours a day. And they say, okay, Salesforce is good, but we really want to understand how the interplay with this other app that we use and Salesforce. And so we turn on that second app. And we find that the top sales performers are all spending an average of X amount of time in those two apps. And the guys that are really struggling, they don't even know how to log into Salesforce, or they're spending 10 minutes a day. And then you can start to bring in workflow patterns into the conversation and help the folks that are, maybe not working in the same way as the top performers, learn from your top performers, and then go one step further. And you see your top performers now, as they start to add other work apps in, are working 12 hours a day. And you're like,
Yeah.
that's great. I love this guy. He's my top performer, but he's going to be burnt out in 2 months. I know this because that's what happened to the last top performer. And so you can start to get in front of those conversations and say, you're running it too hard. And we know you're our top performer, but we don't want to lose you. And so you get in front of burnout. So, it covers the spectrum of digital work just by starting to surface the data and understand what's going on.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, right, that's the $1 million question is what's that secret sauce of, say, your top performers? So not just tracking their time, app usage, but hey, correlating now top performance to maybe their daily work life and application. So really interesting. So you founded the company 2.5 years ago, and where are you guys located?
So we're in Vancouver, but we are remote first. So we have folks up and down the coast. We have
Mhm.
folks across Canada, and we have a couple folks in South America. So we've really embraced the digital first approach, but we do have a wonderful office here at the top down campus in Vancouver that we come into. The team comes into a couple of
Yeah,
days a week, but located in Vancouver.
that's great. And what's your current team size for Produce 8?
We're about 20 folks.
20
So
folks. Okay.
yeah,
And
and
then
we're
yeah.
just starting to ramp up our sales and marketing team as we get into market.
Okay, great. And then anything you want to share around your scale ARR size?
We're pre-revenue, so
Okay.
we're turning on paid in Q2. So
Oh, very exciting. So
yeah.
turning on paid Q2, awesome. And then, really that sets up the next question. Tell us about your go-to-market motion, right? You're setting up paid coming up here. And it seems like a lot of folks within an organization you can talk to because a lot of, different groups, departments, productivity apps that they're using. So who are you reaching out to try to land these prospects?
Yeah, so our identified addressable market is all knowledge workers. It's all of us that are spending most of our day in front of a laptop screen and totally immersed in a digital world. And so that's why we really hone in on this digital wellness aspect, because we feel that most people that want to understand wellness in their life have a pretty good handle on everything outside of their digital world, but they may not understand the nuances of what happens when they're staring at a screen which happens to be most of their amount,
So
most of
you're,
the
but
time that they're
so
awake.
knowledge workers, right? Big audience, but as you go to sell this, are you trying, is this like a PLG motion where you're trying to get like, let's say a Dropbox where they just sign up to track their productivity? Like who are you trying to
Yeah,
sell specifically
for
into
sure.
to sign
So
up?
we have two go-to-market streams. So that was our addressable market. So the first is we stay true to managed service providers.
Mhm.
So managed IT service providers, there's 40,000 of them in North America, and they all have a roster of anywhere from 20 to 2,000 SMBs that they serve.
Mhm.
And what's really special about MSPs as well, it's where we came from, but they are their technology gurus for all of their customers. And so they're looking, all of those SMBs are looking at their MSPs to help them understand what technology decisions to make. And so, it's our job. We've launched several successful products to MSPs and really helped, evolve that space and continue to do so through ScalePad. We want to give the MSPs an answer to the question when their customer asks them, how do, what about employee monitoring tools? Like, how do I
Mhm.
understand what my people are doing if they don't want to necessarily recommend an employee monitoring tool, if they want to, be privacy led, if they want to, give them options that are more focused on the digital well-being. And so our goal is to get this in MSP's hands, have them using it for themselves to understand the intersection of people and technology in their own organizations, and then give them a means to pass it on to their customers. So through
Yeah.
that channel model.
So
So
managed
that,
IT service providers. So like, but are you reaching out to the CEO, C-level, like who, like, because this I could, applies to the whole org, it sounds
yeah,
like, but like, are you just, trying to reach anybody in there or who is specific, what title are you reaching out to in these orgs?
yeah, we definitely want to talk to the CEOs of MSPs because we want to arm them with something to talk to their customers about, as well as, help them give all of their team a way to understand what's going on in their day to get ahead of burnout and, to understand how they're using their tools, because MSPs end up using a lot of tools. And so
Yeah.
we want them to be able to understand that as well. But, the average MSP worker, we want them to pick this up, for themselves and be the end
Mhm.
benefactor of the digital wellness aspect. So we're talking to both. We
Mhm.
also talk to SaaS companies.
Okay.
So
All right.
I
Great.
think that this is, all the companies at top down use the product and they all love it. That Salesforce example, it's not far off from what happened in one of our larger companies as they started to understand their CRM usage, or started to understand that there was actually 3 CRMs that were in use, and their top performers were all happened to be
Mhm.
using the one that was set up properly.
Yeah.
So SaaS companies and their tool sprawl, it makes it a really good candidate as well. And so again, speaking to SaaS CEOs, they're all very interested in understanding this, and speaking to SaaS workers, they want to
Mhm.
understand what's going on in their day. So those are our two
Okay.
main focuses: is MSPs customers, and SaaS companies.
Okay. That's great. Yeah. There's big markets there. And so you've recently raised some funds. How much capital have you raised to date now?
We've raised 6 million in seed funding.
Okay, so 6 million seed funding. And what did you see as a trigger or milestone that said Produce is ready to raise some capital?
Well, we raised, some pre-seed capital right out the
Hmm.
gate to put the founding team together, and we were able to bring in some high caliber, proven folks on the product leadership and development side to start, solving this problem technically,
Hmm.
because it's not an obvious solution. We had to rebuild the back end once already in the first year, just to ensure that we had a scalable system to ingest all these events and start to display it back in a meaningful way. We've also had to invest heavily in data scientists so they can understand the data and start to calibrate the scoring and have that make sense. So, the pre-seed was really setting the foundation, and then the seed has come in to now get us through our go-to-market, ramp up the sales and marketing team, and and
Hmm.
start to get this in people's hands.
Okay, that makes sense. So pre-seed, really bringing that team together. Sounds like there's a bit of development, technical effort here just to get this product going, probably a lot of data to analyze. And then now raising that seed round to really ramp your go-to-market engine and invest now in sales and marketing. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. You got
Okay.
it.
Okay. Interesting. And any lessons that you'd like to share with other SaaS founders listening who are going through fundraising or thinking about fundraising and just those stages, in your case, a little capital to build that team, start developing the product, and now we're going to go to market. But any tips or tricks that you've learned along the way?
Oh gosh, how long do we have? Uh,
We've got a couple minutes left.
we set out to solve a big problem. And some of the we took what has been really successful in just simply people wanting to understand what's going on, awareness. That's all that personal wellness devices are doing, is just bringing the data forward and creating awareness. And so, big, big problems are sometimes fairly obvious and the solution isn't there. Like one of the really inspiring founders for me personally is the Bumble story, who entered a market that it was, heavily saturated online dating, and just took a different approach. We're going to lead with the female. We're going to, put ourselves right up alongside big tech logos. She went to different university campuses, and in areas that had no Facebook, no Instagram, she would put signs that said no Bumble. So she just elevated the brand right up alongside big tech to say, we're not scared of being big. And that would be kind of my first sort of step is just don't be afraid to try and change something that already exists, but is is an obvious problem that there's no data around. And so, this is exactly what we're trying to do, is just bring forward data to help create awareness around a problem that everybody knows exists. Everybody can agree on the problem statement. You would say it, I would say it. The woman across from me in the office here would say it. I don't know what's going on in my digital workday, but I know that, I have these really intense days and I have really great days. I don't really know how to replicate the really great days, and the really intense days are really hard on me. And just creating awareness around that, just the same way, that personal wellness devices create awareness around your daily activity.
And then let's switch hats here, because you have two hats: SaaS founder, then partner at your firm. What mistakes do you see when you talk? Like you said, you talk to a lot of companies, SaaS companies, and any mistakes that you see when SaaS founders are looking to raise or ramp their company? Any things that just always come up as a pattern?
The pattern, yeah, there's an an unlimited amount of great
Yeah.
ideas out there, and it's so hard because I get fairly easily inspired, and I just love talking to founders, and I truly believe that all of them with the right knowledge and network and motion can be successful. So my previous advice was don't be scared to go big.
Mhm.
My, I guess, follow-up would be realistic and put the work in to make sure you understand exactly what you're doing. So know your market, know your go-to-market motion, know how you may not know what message you're going to bring
Mhm.
to that market, but know how you're going to bring it to that market and how you're going to get feedback to iterate that message, because what you and your team think the message might be and the problem might be to solve, you have to listen at the end of the day to your customers, because they're going to tell you what version of your thought pattern is actually
Mhm.
meaningful. And so it's an incredibly adaptive process to go out there and bring a new product to market. And so I can't understate the upfront research that's needed to be done around the market that you're trying to serve. But as steadfast as you can be in your vision, you need to listen as well.
That's, yeah, great advice. Great advice there, and really interesting two perspectives that you have as partner in Top Down and then Produce 8. So as we wrap up here, what's next for Produce 8? What's coming up that is exciting? I know Q2 go to market launch. So what's exciting this year for Produce 8?
Yeah, well, we're really excited to iterate on the scoring, and as we get more and more users into the system, be able to leverage our data scientists to calibrate the scores to ensure that we're providing people meaningful relative data about their personal and digital well-being habits. We're really excited to see and measure how this impacts organizations at scale. So when teams of 20, 30, 50, 500 are on the platform, the actual impact that we're creating inside those organizations. So, we're really excited to enter into the next year as we start to scale the user base from the great, group of beta customers that we've had out there to the general market, and start to just, continue to be a part of the conversation around, remote work and hybrid work, and understanding what's going on, and hopefully, helping create space for people to do great work in their day. Because at the end of the day, we build on the assumption that people want to do great work, and that when people enter that state of flow, it's a pretty special place for them to be working and creating. And as much as the collaboration tools have allowed us to communicate in a whole different way, every time, it takes 23 minutes to refocus after you get interrupted by a Slack message. And in our early research, nobody goes more than 15 minutes if you don't have any controls without getting interrupted. So those two things create a lot of distraction in people's days. And so hopefully we can start to impact that for creating space for work.
Wow. And I can just, I love data, of course, as a CFO. So I can see, yes, a lot of leveraging the data coming into, I mean, those are really interesting I don't know what we call them, facts or just data points about the 23 minutes. And then you mentioned, I think 98 minutes of like lost productivity during the day.
Yeah.
So it just seems like that data play as well in your platform will be really interesting just to educate everybody. Yeah, we know we have problems, but a little bit more hard science behind that education.
Yeah, definitely.
So really, Joel, really appreciate you sharing your background and what Produce 8 is up to today. And if our listeners would like to learn more about Produce 8, where should we send them online?
Yeah, please just come to produce8.com. We're regularly producing content now just to help share, what's going on in the space, and our, as our product continues to iterate, we'd love to have people jumping in there, testing it out and giving us feedback, and making sure that we're building to solve the problems that we've identified, and people that resonate with our users.
That's great. And just to be sure, it's produce8.com.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. Produce8.com. So check out Joel and what they're doing. I think it sounds like you're going to be producing some great content coming out of that data. So Joel, really appreciate your time today and sharing your story.
Thanks, Ben. And feel free to check out topdown.com as well to see the rest of our portfolio companies and what we're doing there. And for any founders out there, we'd love to chat. We have a full back office that supports our startups, which I didn't get into, but is really had a huge impact on Produce 8, having the management division of Top Down manage our recruiting, manage our back office. It's been so impactful. So it's a pretty cool model we have over there as well.
That's great. We'll put the link in there as well. So Joel, really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much, Ben.